is experiencing a tremendous amount of hate, of rage, and anger. And if we think of ourselves as software, we are literally healing the software from within the same program that created the hate and the anger. We're transcending the anger and the hate while we're still in the anger and the hate. It's analogous to a program rewriting itself from within the program without external intervention or external help, because the program has the intelligence to do that. And that's just an awesome way to think about what it is that we're experiencing here.
You know, the work you've done, how many years have you worked on this?
This is the result. I actually began working on this, George, when I was still an engineer with Martin Marietta Aerospace, and I did the first presentation in Denver, Colorado in 1986. And since that time, it's taken me 20 years sharing these concepts. And you and I, we're talking about this a little differently the way we do in the book or the way I might in some audiences, but it's taken me 20 years through audiences all over the world, and many of them through translators, to find a language to share these very profound concepts in a way that's meaningful and hopefully in a neutral language. This isn't about religion, although I can see where religions were built around the power and the wisdom of what we're talking about. But this force was there, the field was there long before religions were ever there, and our ability to communicate with this field has been with us since we arrived roughly around 200,000 years ago. So we've always had the language. Religions came along and wrapped themselves around the power of what it means for us to have direct access to the creative energy of our universe for healing, peace, abundance, and I think that's what this time in history is all about. We're recognizing that we are a family, that cooperation is going to get us a lot further than competition, especially for resources on our planet, and that war, I believe we're outgrowing the habit of using war to solve our differences, and then the question is, will we learn that lesson before this next great war?
I'm not sure if we are outliving it, to tell you the truth. I think there are too many people who just don't get it, Greg.
I think what will happen, I agree with what you're saying, and I can see where you would say that, George. There are two forms of, two perspectives of consciousness that I'm seeing happening right now. And there's an old way of solving problems using military solutions and force, and there is a very powerful global current, and you really see this when you leave North America, of people who have recognized that while we may not always agree with one another, that cooperation is going to get us a lot further than competition. And both of those things are happening simultaneously. And because of the way this field works, because of the hologram, because of the entanglement, because of the connectedness, I think it's going to be kind of like what we saw at the end of the Cold War. We knew some things were going on. We were using military strength to buy ourselves some time. And on the other hand, there were people that were working from a very different perspective to change things. And we'll never know everything that happened. From working with the military, I know that we never have all the information.
See, I agree with you when you say we're always in it. But I believe when you're in it, there are doorways. And in order for you to take advantage of being in it, you need to learn how to open up the doorway.
Absolutely, George. I'm with you 100%. And we mentioned earlier, many people are looking at the anomalies of what are happening, of what is happening on our planet, physically, culturally, in terms of civilization. Everyone knows something's up. This isn't business as usual. Something big is on the horizon. Almost universally, the texts, the traditions, the prophecies, and I know you've had people on the show talking about this, they describe some very frightening scenarios, and if you take the time to look closely, they always give an alternative. And for those listeners that have studied the Bible code, and I know you've talked about that on the program as well, some of the most frightening predictions in a 3,000-year-old map of what is believed to be a map of the quantum possibilities of our future in the Bible code, some of those most frightening predictions of global war and Holocaust, and those are the words that are used, right below those predictions, George, there's a phrase that not many people talk about, and I don't know why. But that phrase asks a question. When it shares those frightening possibilities, the phrase says, will you change it? Will you change it? I get goosebumps just saying that. Will you change it? Implying that somehow the outcome that's so frightening is not set in stone, that somehow it's still malleable, it's still soft, and somehow that we are participating and have input and some choice in terms of how this time in history plays out. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this material, because we're part of the answer. It's not out there, and we can't wait for other people to figure this out. This is us. It's our time in history. I think history is going to look back at us, at this generation. They're going to say, this is the generation that chose peace because they had to survive. But this is the generation that recognized that the 20th century was all about learning who we are.
What about greed, though? Where does greed fit in here?
Well, greed, I think greed it's a byproduct of power. And power is a lot of what our time in history is all about. Where do we find our power? And do people that really that believe they have power, do they really have power at all? Because, George, ultimately what we talk about a force that connects everything and everyone has access to it. And we already know the language to speak to that force. What the ancients said is that opens the doorway to another force that nothing on this earth can touch. And those are the words of philosophers in ancient texts. What scientists are showing is that when we tap this power of emotion and we are tapping the emotion in our bodies to speak to the field in a meaningful way, that cancers can disappear. AIDS doesn't make any sense to our bodies. And there are people now that have transcended the AIDS virus, that there were documented cases of children born with AIDS that no longer have the virus in their bodies. And the question is, what do those children do? Are they taking drugs? Are they eating a mushroom in their refrigerator? Are they wearing a stone, around their neck? And while those things may help, the bottom line is those children are feeling a love and support from their family. They don't know that they're supposed to die from this disease. And in the presence of those kinds of feelings of love, their body changes. And we all have, we've all got stem cells waiting for a command from our hearts to tell those stem cells where to go in our bodies to replace whatever it is that's been damaged. But we're conditioned to believe that isn't possible. And all of these things are documented in the open literature. It's truly a miraculous way of looking at life. But what the bottom line is, it empowers us to be more than victims in our lives. And at this time in history, I think that's important. I think it's important for all of us.
I use this every day in my life, Greg, all the time, except I am human. And there are sometimes